Well, would you look at that? A lot more of you want to talk about fitness than I was expecting. I'll do many more videos talking about what fitness is and where it fits in the larger world and how to get there and all those kinds of things because, again, I think this is a very simple subject. That being said, there is a distraction in the comments, and that distraction is a conversation around Mr. Mike Israetel. This video, I'm actually going to defend Mike Israetel, even though I vastly disagree with him in many areas. You might say, Pat, why would you spend time defending Mike Israetel if you disagree with him? And I'm gonna say, because I think he does far more good than he does bad. In addition to that, I think he's far less set in his ways than most of the fitness industry on the internet. And I'll talk about the dissent and the things I disagree with, but at the same time, I think he's just a product of his current fame, more than anything else. So I'm going to start first with what I disagree with, then I'm going to talk about exactly what I understand to be the issues with him currently in the larger space, then I'm going to say why I don't think those issues are actually that bad, and then I'm going to talk about the things that I think are great about Mr. Mike Israetel and what he does for our larger fitness world. I want to start this video by saying I don't know Mike Israetel. I've never met the guy in person. I've only watched his YouTube videos. I actually don't know of anybody who actually does know him. I simply stumbled across his YouTube videos after not watching his YouTube videos because they looked hyper-inflammatory and he looks like a giant douchebag. And then I started watching his videos and was like, this guy's pretty funny. And I'll go over why I think all that stuff, but I don't know him. I have no relation to him. I'm not trying to support him because I think he truly needs support. I think just the conversation around him is a distracting one in my comments. And I find it really funny that when I mention that I think he's kind of brilliant, that is the thing that people latched onto because it's so relevant in the space right now. So let me talk first about the biggest things I disagree with Mike on. The biggest thing is this emphasis on what you look like and physique and getting huge being something that is an important thing for training. Now, here's the deal. Mike does this because this was important for him. When he was younger, he was vastly insecure about who he was. And I would argue that today, to this day, he is still insecure. And a lot of the things he says and does help point to him still being insecure. No matter how silly and jokey he is, no matter how successful he is, there are things that still point to a level of not okayness in his presentation of the stuff that he does. Specifically, this necessity to continue to change the way he looks, go get surgeries, have facial work done, express really negative thoughts about himself in his videos, talking about how shitty he is or talking about how ugly he is and things along those lines. These are clearly parts of his own belief structure that he still clings on to some degree, no matter how intellectually sharp he might be. One of the other big things that I disagree with is this concept he has that if you look better, you will feel better. That is not true. It's fundamentally not true. And he's a good example of it, and many other people are great examples of it. Just because you are looking better or even putting the work in to look better does not mean that you will feel better inside. Now, these are things that, because of the work that you're putting into it, might make you start to feel better because the effort you're doing to take care of yourself, but it does not mean that you do feel better about yourself. Again, it's a similar thing with the fitness. If you look fit doesn't mean you are fit. Just because you look better doesn't mean you are better. Could it be the case? Sure. Is it the case? No. Will it be the thing to fix you? Probably not. Could it help? Maybe. But this linear thinking of look better, feel better, just not the case. Ask a lot of these top-level figure competitors about how insecure they are in their own being. You'll see it over and over again, stories-wise, that they look great, but don't feel good. This wood is wet. One of the last things that I am going to point here to me disagreeing with him, my eyes, is the force with which he speaks when it comes to some of the science that he references. He references very, very forcefully certain studies or certain perspectives or certain data points because that's what is known. But there's this thing with science where it's always being proven wrong, and there's always exceptions to the rule, and there's always differences in how things can be interpreted and how studies are done. And he's honestly really good about this with stuff that he does not align with. But when there are certain things that he speaks to as like unequivocal facts, there are times where it's just like, that's too much force to be speaking with, when there are always exceptions to those kinds of things. And that's, again, my personal bias is towards not really buying into any one thing. But that is something that I think people could be very confused by if they then start to realize that, you know, maybe we should start to look a little bit closer at some of these nutrients that he says are absolutely just, it doesn't do anything and blah, 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 blah. But also, he's mostly right in the sense that we don't have any data supporting that these little tiny nutrients don't do anything for blah, 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 blah. You know, like, there are so many things that he speaks to in such a way that I do agree with when it comes to the application of it in the world, but at the same time, it's too forceful. It's too one-dimensional in this is kind of how it is. Because in the science world, that's just not how science works. This is how it is should be followed up with right now as far as we know. Not this is how it is. The next thing for me that I really kind of struggle with is his insistence that it's okay to do plastic surgery as like some sort of useful tool for people to, you know, overcome feeling bad about themselves. That shit's not true, man. It's similar to the whole like using a bodybuilding routine to somehow look better, but then not actually ever feeling better afterwards because you haven't fixed that core wound inside for yourself. Ah, cool. And those are the things that we want to be looking at when we're training or thinking about talking to people and offering our opinion. We want to see, are the things that I'm doing and saying actually going to move the needle for people? And I think that some of his stuff is purely his own insecurity getting in the way of recognizing that these things are really not valuable and they don't help most people in the long run. In fact, they hurt. I found a chanterelle. We're going to cook this up for Thanksgiving. This one's a little old though. Anywho, that's another one. It's just this insistence that plastic surgery is somehow valuable. It is, and I could see a value in it. But this normalization of it as a go-to, especially for himself, it seems non-congruous with his level of confidence that he portrays. Lastly, I would say that one of the biggest issues I have with him is his constant sale of Versa grips. Nah, this one's actually not that serious, but I think it's really funny. The Versa grips actually highlight for me a big difference about how I view fitness versus how he sells and projects fitness. For him, he sells a product called Versa grips, which help people not use their grip when they're doing bodybuilding exercises, which basically makes it so they can lift more weights and use the bigger muscles because their grip is weak in an effort to make their muscles look better. Now, for me, I would go, you should probably have a stronger grip, so why not utilize these exercises where your grip is failing to work your weak-ass grip? Not put on a tool that blocks that out. Now, if your goal is only to look a certain way and not be capable, not be functional, sure, man, go ahead and don't use your actual grip. Just put on a tool and do it. But that, again, is the same mindset around taking drugs to look a different way or having surgery or all these other things. The purpose is different. We're looking for just what we look like versus what we are capable of. And I actually don't care if he uses grips because his overall goal is different than mine. Mine is to live a high quality of life. His is to look gnarly. Because I don't even know if he's trying to look good. I think he's just trying to be huge. Anyway. Those are the biggest things that I personally disagree with. So now let's dive in to what the current narrative is around Mike Israetel and what the biggest arguments are against him right now. And then also talk about why I don't think those really matter in the grand scheme of things. Welcome to the campsite I built at my house, by the way. This is where I host some retreats for coaches as well as fathers. But, whoa. We got some dirt come up here. The biggest arguments right now on him in the space, here's what's happened. You've got a dude who did a piece on him. It was about an hour-long piece breaking down his PhD thesis. I watched the whole piece and it made a bunch of really great points. Turns out he's didn't do a great thesis and all these other things. And there's a lot of stuff within that is kind of shady. You look at it and you go, why would you do this? Why would this be your doctoral thesis? And when you watch that video, it makes you go, damn, he's presenting himself as this type of a person who's got these levels of accreditation and these other things because that's how he bills himself, Dr. Mike, Dr. Mike, Dr. Mike. But there is a devaluing of that term when you see the application of his thesis there. Now, here's what I would say about that. Yeah, it's a bummer. He didn't have a great thesis, but that doesn't take away from his current level of information he produces. And I'll talk about more of that when I get into why I think I still like him. There is a dishonesty around what he's saying, but I think that plays right back into his own insecurities. He's presented himself as this doctor. He says it every fucking video. In addition to that, he presents himself as this jiu-jitsu guy. And it's like, dude, yeah, he's big and thick and strong. I'm sure it'd be a pain in the ass to roll with him, and he puts time and effort into it. So he's gonna say, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. But it's like, who cares? I don't care. I don't care that he's a doctor. I don't care that he's a jiu-jitsu guy. I care that the information that he presents in his videos actually carries some validity. And if you pay attention to his videos, that's what they are. They're very valid. There's so much amazing information. He found a niche on here where what he did was basically take these ridiculous training videos and break them down in such a way where he's picking apart the things that actually work and don't work. For those things, you didn't need a doctorate. You didn't need to be a fancy jiu-jitsu guy. These terms that he's placed on himself and led every video with, what they may have done for some people is helped build initial credibility. But in this day and age, it's more about what you're giving people in terms of education and empowerment to go and make yourself better than it is about the degree that you have that says that you can or cannot give them that information. Now, I may be biased in this because I don't have a degree. I was a voice and music theater major who found myself in fitness for 20 years. But because of that, I'm open-minded enough to be like, I don't think I know it all. And I'm gonna constantly be like, well, what's my goal here? Is there a better way to do this? So it actually keeps my mind more open rather than me stuck on some rigid ass studies. But the bigger problems here are that he's presented himself as something that he is not, or not as credible, I guess. And that's what people are latching onto. So yeah, sure. It's some drama there, but it doesn't really matter if the actual information that he's presenting is, the best information that is currently out there right now. And maybe subtly there's some nuances that are slightly different, but he's pretty flat and level with his delivery. So that's one of the biggest things that people have an issue with, is that his doctorate wasn't as legit as he claimed it to be. But again, I think it's just speaking to his level of insecurity, feeling the need to put that forward as who he was. And there's a dishonesty there, which I understand would break down some people's feelings towards him. The other part about what people hate about Mike is that he has essentially said how smart he is multiple times. And again, this is the exact same thing that I have an issue with, is I think that he's insecure. And this need to continually tell everyone how smart you are, or how good your information is, or how big you are. This doesn't matter. Nobody gives a shit about you. In the world, most of the time, people don't care. The only person who cares that much is you. And I think that this is another thing that people struggle with in his presentation, is he'll say stuff like, I'm so smart, I've got this huge IQ, I blah, blah, blah. And that rubs people who also have insecurities the wrong way. It doesn't rub me the wrong way. When he says, I'm really smart, it makes me laugh at him. It doesn't make me go, oh, I don't feel good about this. I should attack him and make him feel even worse and discredit his information. I go, well, what do you have to say, Mr. Smart Guy? Let me see where that stands. So that's the other thing, is he's been on steroids for a long time, which makes him potentially irritated and angry and all these other things. And he goes on interviews and he's talking about how smart he is. Those are not the things he says, at least not seriously, on the videos he makes. Those are usually in videos that are in interview scenarios. They are in times where he's probably doing massive amounts of steroids. And he ends up saying some dumb shit. We all say dumb shit. His just happens to be really insecure and promoting his own level of intellect. Lastly, one of the things that people criticize him for is they go on and they say, Dr. Mike Israetel is not fit. But I think Dr. Mike Israetel would tell you that he's not fit. He would tell you, yeah, I'm not fit. I'm a bodybuilder. I'm not supposed to be fit. But people are being like, look at how unathletic he is. Yeah, dude, he doesn't train for that. And I'm sure he would be the first one to be like, nope, not a fit dude. That's at least my perspective on it. I think he very much does not pursue that as a training method. He pursues getting huge. And he says that unapologetically over and over again. So here's the main thing for me. I think Mike does way more good than he does negative for our larger fitness industry. One, I think Mike understands how to interpret data. When he looks at studies, he can read the study, take on board the big points, distill them down, and make them easily tangible for people who want to understand fitness a little bit more. So when you watch his videos and he breaks down that's not the greatest way to do it, it's oftentimes quite correct, especially when it comes to the current understanding of science. So I think he knows that. And regardless of whether his doctorate was the most quality, he's still presenting really good information in a pretty level-headed, flat way. So I think that's a benefit. I think that we should continue to listen to Mike in these areas, and he's done far more good than bad when it comes to that. In addition to that, I think Mike is more outcome-based than he is just looking at the raw data. So he's looking for specific outcomes and data that supports those outcomes. His outcome that he looks for is what? It's aesthetics, it's physique, it's muscle growth, it's hypertrophy. It's basically looking at getting big fucking muscles. His goal is to get you swole. He's not ever said anything different than that. He's just saying, when looking at the science behind getting jacked, this is what he sees to be the best way to do so. He makes an app that sells that, sure, and he makes money off that, sure. But that's what he's trying to do. It's an outcome. He's not saying I'm stuck to a specific method. He's saying this method supports my outcome. A lot of other people that push back against him will be talking about methods. They'll be saying my method is better, but they're maybe not saying better at achieving the same outcome that he is actually looking for. Mike does not look to get fit. I would not have a problem saying the things that you're telling people to do don't make them the fittest. And he would probably say, you're right, it doesn't make them the fittest, it makes them the jackedest. And that's fine. All of the stuff he does is through that lens. He might have some opinions on what would make people fit and what would make people improve across the board, but his unapologetic, I am looking to get big, and all of the information I have is in an attempt to get people to look big, and he's got some dietary advice of losing weight and things like that, is all bang on, and it's all outcome based, which is really good when it comes to the fitness world. You should be outcome based, not fixed at selling your program. Now, his program is being sold, but his program is centered around an outcome, and I'm sure he would change his program in order to achieve the outcome if he found a better way to do it. That seems to be a big part of his mentality, and that is how science actually works, is we should be going, what outcome can I get? What can I mess around with in order to get that outcome? If you show me evidence that supports that this different messing around is going to give me this different outcome, then that is where we should go. We should look to change our program up to get the outcome that we're looking for and never be stuck on the program such that an outcome could be better achieved. The reason I love Mike is his points are simple and actionable. He's giving people very tangible things that they can go out and do. It's not particularly esoteric and weird. He keeps revisiting back to the same simple points. High levels of intensity relative to the movement. Intensity would be load when it comes to things like weightlifting. He talks about sets that are close to failure, getting within these certain rep ranges. He talks about full range of motion in order to build muscle. He talks about understanding the basics behind diet, the calories in versus calories out, but also sometimes looking at the nutrients that are there and being hungry or less hungry. And you could argue that he's a little bit more on the side of he doesn't mind supplements and things along those lines as much as eating whole foods, but he's not trying to be protective of health. He's trying to be jacked. And so the stuff he's saying is going to be around weight loss and getting jacked and putting on muscle. So when you look at it through that lens, his advice has always been pretty simple and actionable. I think he's probably pretty open-minded most of the time, but doesn't get super challenged by anyone who disagrees in the actual application of what he's talking about. I bet you if we sat down and had a conversation, it'd be pretty interesting to chat with him about the value of aesthetics. I think he's a pretty smart dude. I still do. And I think it would be hard for me to fully defend my points based off of what I think he would present. But I don't know. Maybe not. I'd love to have that conversation personally, because maybe he could convince me that there's some value in pursuing being huge. I don't see it. And there's no proof showing me that people feel better about themselves when they get to those places. But I don't know. Maybe there is, and that would be an interesting conversation to have. I also think he's pretty funny. I think a lot of his jokes, while being crass and over the top and self-deprecating in so many ways, and carrying a lot of truth with him, I think he's funny. I think he says some stuff that you wouldn't normally hear in a way that makes it much easier to listen to, and is pretty funny. And lastly, the big thing I want to say is that I think he's pretty balanced. I think he gets hate from both sides, which makes me laugh. Because if you get hate from either end of the spectrum, or both ends of the spectrum, I should say, then you're probably somewhere in the middle. You're not quite a full gym bro, but you're pursuing gym bro things, and what you're saying is rubbing up against their method of how they do stuff. And he's not quite full scientist, even though he does kind of claim that. He's getting reamed by some of academia, or people who are super nerdy in the space. I think currently one of the biggest problems that people will have with him is that he's really popular. And when you're really popular, you start to get hate. And the nature of social media and the YouTube space is that you need clicks, you need views. I mean, even me making this video, I recognize that if I have him in a video, it will likely get seen by more people. And not to say that I need to be seen, but if you're making content, you want it to be seen. In the case of people who are in the nerdy side of things, of course they're going to involve Mike. Mike's popular. You make a video around Mike, it's going to get views. Same thing with if you're on the side of it gym bro style, or if you're a React channel that does little documentaries on YouTube drama. Like, of course you're going to bring Mike into it. So because of his size, he's going to get more hate than is probably warranted, and that's just the nature of it. Not the size of his body, but the size of his channel. Anyway, I think Mike does way more good than he does bad for the fitness industry, for the fitness world. And I think he is insecure in a number of ways, but also really secure in a bunch of other ways, and provides really good information. And I like what he does. And I don't think the hate is warranted. And if you're distracted by that, and that's what you're clinging on to, you're just looking for drama. And you're looking to put someone down. Anywho, that's my thoughts. Rant, done.